Hello everybody, and thanks again for attending our 29th annual Christmas party. Cindy and I are so excited that you're here. Right now I'd like to introduce to you a good friend of mine who will open up our party. His name is Neil Patrick Harris. Merry Christmas, Neil.
Merry Christmas to you.
Cue the music!
Well, the time of year is here again to throw a party for a few close friends. Now I'm just tying up a few loose ends, and then we should be good to go. You know, I made a list and checked it twice, because forgetting people isn't nice. But I don't really want to roll the dice, so I'll recheck it nice and slow. Cinderella, check. Belle, check. Snow White, check. Seven Dwarfs, check. Are you ready for Christmas? Are you ready to have some fun in the shiny December sun? 'Cause that's what we're gonna do. Yes, it's true. Are you ready for Christmas? Hurry, hurry, now don't be late, 'cause we're ready to celebrate. And all we need is you. All we need is you.
One of my favorite memories of Disneyland is the fact that I was able to be there on opening day. I was 4 years old, and it was the impressions of a 4-year-old are few and far between, but the one that I remember most was going through the entrance, and they always seem to lead you to the tunnel to the left after you get in the gates. And in the tunnel were these billboards that were built into the side of the tunnel that introduced everybody to each of the lands at Disneyland, Adventureland, Tomorrowland, and so forth. And I was small, and I remember holding on to the bottom of the frame and looking up, because everything is huge when you're 4 years old, and being in this tunnel and then looking at these pictures of these amazing things, the rocket ship, the TWA rocket to the moon, and so forth. And then I walked out of the tunnel, and all of a sudden I was in Disneyland, and this was opening day, and it was like I didn't realize that at the time, but as I've grown older, I understand it was a very special moment. And beyond that, I just remember everything just being big and large and colorful and exciting and so forth. And that's my initial memory of the first time that I was at Disneyland. Several of the Indians that worked in the Indian Village, which was a very important part. Keep in mind, we're talking the 50s here, so the things that Disney was putting out to the public were things that people were familiar with at the time. There was no Star Wars or any of that type of thing then. So Indians and cowboys and all the western part of Adventureland and so forth was a huge part of what Disneyland was. So the Indian Village, they had the canoes, and the Indians would row around the river and so forth. Well, a couple of them actually lived on our property, and so I knew them. And also one of the chiefs that was in charge of Disneyland's Indian Village was named Chief Shooting Star, and he was actually a family friend of my father's. Before Mr. Lincoln was ever brought to Disneyland, it was actually shown at the World's Fair in 1964. And I was there, and I actually went in and participated in that, and I was with the Boy Scouts. It was the National Jamboree that year at Valley Forge. So that was another thing. And of course, for me, Disneyland by that time was like, oh, no big deal, you know. And so, but here was these new rides that eventually were moved to Disneyland, which included It's a Small World. I was at Disneyland when Guy Williams, who was Zorro, had a whole scene done in Adventureland with Sergeant Garcia and a couple of the soldiers and so forth. And he actually had a sword fight with them, and he jumped off the roof onto his horse, reared his horse, and actually rode away into the little backlot that they have there. So I've actually had a lot of experiences at Disneyland. It is the happiest place on earth as far as I'm concerned.
One of my favorite memories from Disney is actually from, I was like 4 or 5. Our family had gone on a 6-week trip. My dad was self-employed, so he had some time off looking for work, and he actually just took us, and one of the things we did was Disney. and we went across all kinds of places, but Disney was one that stuck out in my mind. I remember the great big, I can't even remember the name of the ride, but it was like these great big tires that you sat in. The air came up from underneath and lifted these things, and you just lean back and forth and make these things, and it was kind of like bumper cars with great big legs. The other thing I remember from that trip too was my sisters crying on the Alice in Wonderland ride, which is the most benign ride you ever saw. But at the end, it comes out over these leaves, and they got all scared because you're outside of the ride now. You're out you can see people walking around. They're thinking they're going to just drive off the edge of this thing, and they were just scared to death that they were going to ride off the edge of the leaves there on the Alice in Wonderland ride. Those are a couple of my memories.
So one of my favorite Disney memories as a little girl was going on the submarines. And back then, they actually had real mermaids in the water. And I was so thrilled to see a real mermaid swimming in the water from the submarine windows. And that's my best memory of Disneyland.
When I was little, my family took a family vacation to Walt Disney World, and we took my grandma Lindsay with us. And I remember splitting up the tickets and finally getting to go on a family ride. And it was up here, as you'll see, is the submarine. It was the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And we're in line, all excited to get on there. We're walking down the little spiral staircase. We get in there, my grandma sits down, and I sit right next to her, and all of a sudden she goes, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. How am I going to breathe? And my mom goes, Mother, lean over at the window. There's air coming up there. And I go, yeah, Grandma, just look out the window. So we're there, we're waiting to go on the ride, and all of a sudden the bubbles start happening. We are submerging at this point. Keep in mind, we are on a submarine ride, and we're submerging. And on the right, I hear the narrative. On the left, I hear a, oh Lordy, oh Lordy. And I'm like, Grandma, just breathe. It's going to be fun. And all of a sudden, that submarine starts going forward, and I hear a narrative on the right, and all of a sudden I hear on my left, well, I'll be. Looky there. Looky there. Cindy, looky there. And that's my most favorite memory.
So one of my favorite memories of Disneyland would be being really young, 7 or 8 years old. Donnie must have been a couple years older than me, and we went to Disneyland as a family with my dad and my mom. Another one would have to be all the great band trips that we used to take down there with all the teenagers and stuff. And probably the last one would be my honeymoon and getting married and getting to spend what was a New Orleans type of wedding and then getting to go to New Orleans Square for the honeymoon. That was probably my favorite memory.
We got to go on Star Tours. And I guess Steve-O set it up so that way when it came to who was going to be the spy inside the ship, I got to be selected as a spy, so that was pretty cool.
One of my favorite memories at Disney was when me and my sister Ashley were sitting down on the curb eating these giant sundaes from the ice cream parlor next to Carnation Ice Cream. And there was just ice cream was getting everywhere because it was so big, and all our like napkins were flying everywhere because of the wind. So it was funny.
My favorite Disney memory is of Vince. Gotta love the guy. We were convinced that we convinced Vince to go on Tower of Terror with us, and he was so scared. Nothing like hearing him scream like a little girl when the elevator dropped. And in the same night, you know, he was hitting on a girl on the bus. Embarrassed the poop out of him. It was great. I'd have to say that was one of my best memories.
I remember when me, Steve, and Ryan were little kids, we went to Disneyland, and right about when the time the park was closing, we went on Thunder Mountain. The guy was letting us ride it multiple times, so we just run down to the entrance and just keep running back up. We did it about 3 times before we finally had to leave. That was one of my favorite moments at Disneyland.
I guess one of my favorite memories of Disneyland was the first time I ever went on Tower of Terror. I think I went to Disneyland with my band for high school, and it'd been years since I'd been to Disneyland, so I couldn't remember anything that was there, really. And we all just raced to Tower of Terror because we all got in really early since we were in the parade. They let us in like 6 a.m., something like that, like ridiculously early so we could get set up in the back. And so we ran to Tower of Terror, and at the time I always wore a baseball cap. And so once we actually got in there, my friends were like, oh, you should probably take off your hat because you don't want to lose it. I'm like, oh, you're right. So I just set it on the ground, and as we start going up, as soon as we drop, I noticed my hat that was on the ground lifting up and just kind of hovering there right in front of me the whole time. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And so every time we would go down, the hat would raise back up, hover in the air, and then as soon as we'd go up again, it would fall back down. And it just kept doing that the whole ride, and I was just cracking up because I thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Hi kids, it's show and tell time. What do we have first? Just above the window on your left is an original dinner plate from Disney's Contemporary Resort. When the resort opened in 1971, it was extremely unique, as it allowed the monorail to pass through the interior of the building. Up on the 15th floor, there was a special restaurant called the Top of the World. It offered not only the best food, but also the best views of Disney World. Although the restaurant changed over the years, the plates remained the same until 2012. This 12-inch plate was custom ordered by Walt Disney Company and produced in England by Royal Doulton Hotel Porcelain. Too formal. Show me something fun. This zebra costume is an original from the Lion King celebration, which was a parade based on the animated film The Lion King. The costume is missing the zebra headpiece. The parade ran at Disneyland from 1994 to 1997, after which 4 of the floats were moved to Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida for a new parade. The Lion King celebration featured the first use of audio animatronics in a Disney parade. 89 cast members performed in the Lion King celebration. This included 56 dancers, 12 puppeteers, 10 acrobatic pole dancers, 6 musicians, and 5 remote control operators. So a very fun piece of Disney history. Too many stripes. Show me something unusual. Okay, well, let's try this. This is an original Tower of Terror costume, but it never made it inside any of the parks. This is what you call a prototype or test costume. When Disney Imagineers design rides, they not only want a certain look for the ride, but also for cast members. This test costume gave the Imagineers a good hotel bellhop look, but the colors were found to be too bright, so they decided to go with darker colors to give it a more terror, zombie-like feel. So this is a very unusual, one-of-a-kind costume. That costume just doesn't suit me very well. Do you have something more in a Magic Mickey look? Yes, we do. This drawing of Sorcerer Mickey is an original drawing that was used in the show called Drawn to the Magic. The show included 3 singing Disney animators, some familiar Disney songs, and visits by the characters that were drawn. So how's that, Mr. Announcer Person? Well, that's okay, but we're celebrating Christmas. And so you haven't shown me anything related to Christmas. Please show me something related to Christmas. Okay then. Here's a very special Christmas fishing pole. This original fishing prop was used in Goofy's house as part of the float in Disney's Christmas Fantasy Parade. The fishing pole would normally have a bucket attached to it, and Pluto or Max would lower it down to Goofy. Here's Nick Cannon to tell you all about it.
Now here's a house that's one big ant problem waiting to happen. The baker did a nice job, but the real architect of this edible edifice is Goofy. I hope there's some dog biscuits in the oven because Pluto looks a little hungry.
Our fishing pole would still be on the float, but it developed a crack and was replaced. So there you go, a very Merry Christmas prop from Disneyland.
One of my favorite Disney memories that I've had was in 2013 when they brought in Mickey and the Magical Map at the Fantasyland Theater. I remember watching the show, not expecting anything, and it was a great show, and then there was just one effect that really got me at the end, which was where Yen Sid has his hand under Mickey, and it's an animated screen that then turns actually into Mickey. And it's just an incredible effect. And seeing that for the first time was my favorite Disney memory.
One of my favorite Disney memories was my parents, my little sister, and I. For part of my birthday, we had dinner with the princesses. When we first walked in, we took a picture with Ariel. As we waited for our table, we saw all the princesses walking around. Aurora, Belle, Snow White, and one princess me and my sister thought was Belle because she was in a blue dress and a blue bow in her hair. As we got to our seat and dinner went on, we realized it was Wendy from Peter Pan. And my mother turns to us and goes, "When was Wendy a princess?" And that is one of my favorite Disney memories.
So, one of my favorite memories was we were doing a behind-the-scenes tour of Haunted Mansion, and this was in Christmas time, so they had all the Nightmare Before Christmas decorations up. And the number one rule was do not touch anything. So of course I was there with my buddy Ian, so Ian and I, we just start touching every little thing that we possibly can. And then we go into this one room. It's the second room in Haunted Mansion where the candle floats. And so we went back there, and during Christmas time, instead of the candle floating, it's Zero from Nightmare Before Christmas. And so I guess Ian wasn't paying attention, but I went and touched it and stuff, and then we moved a couple of rooms later, and they were saying like how only Imagineers are allowed to touch Zero, and so I'm literally probably the only non-Imagineer to ever touch Zero, which is really cool, because at the time I was a mechanical engineering student trying to become an Imagineer, so I was like, alright, well now it's destined. But now that I have business, I guess I'll be like a financer for Imagineering or something like that. But yeah, that's definitely one of my most favorite Disney memories. Why, hello there. Welcome to the Moore Houseboat Party 2016 Summer Special. I'll be your host, Stephen Moore. The Moore Houseboat Party 2016 is sponsored by Coca-Cola. Drop it like it's hot.
I wonder if
Coca-Cola.
So he said, oh my god, I burned my tongue.